Nite Sprite becomes a thing at what point?
We got one gig at 7th Avenue South, which is where I first saw Steve Gadd, right? So that in itself was a very special moment. It was the Brecker Brothers owned club down on Bleecker Street on 7th Avenue. And, you know, we're talking 1981, and I remember Jay had this silver Dodge van packed with all the gear, drums, guitar amps, bass amps, PA speakers to a point, board. We did everything ourselves. Right?
Everything.
So this obsession with sound started a long time ago, right? So,
wow.
Yeah. So, and I remember it was basically Jay and I carrying all that stuff upstairs,
Wow.
you know, and it was upstairs to get to the club. And anyway, we set up, we got it. We had an amazing gig. Andy Block was studying with Steve Kahn at the time. And Steve Kahn and Peter, they were either living in the same building or they were hanging out, friends, you know, and I had been trying to contact and write to Peter, you know, before that anyway. So it turns out they come to the gig, Steve Kahn and Peter Erskine. And it was because of that gig that Peter recommended me for basically the rest of my career.
That's amazing.
He thought so much of what I did to handle the music. And there's actually a DVD that we produced called Flies on the Studio Wall that was the making of the Convergence record that Jay Oliver did back in 2014. And in that video, there's a snippet of Peter, my school partner and video producer of that project, Steve Orkin. He got Peter to do an interview, and Peter talked about that night, and I had never heard him talk about that night. And it's quite cool. I mean, this DVD's available on my website if you want to check it out. But Peter, you know, said, yeah, he goes, I just couldn't believe the way this kid was handling the music, blah, 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 blah. And I don't know if I could have handled it that way. And it was just, you know, it was just great, you know. So anyway, like I said, he thought enough of it to recommend me for French Toast. And French Toast was a band led by a French horn player, Peter Gordon. In that band was Anthony Jackson, Michel Camillo, Sammy Figueroa, Lou Soloff, right?
Crazy ensemble. Wow.
Yeah, so it was the precursor to all of Michel Camillo's gigs and bands and work, right? So, so I got called. I got called to do the gig, and I was like, okay. And the guys said, look, we're doing a gig at this club in New York, blah, 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 whatever it was. And Steve Ferrone's playing. So why don't you come down and, you know, you can check it out. Well, I, of course, brought a recorder. I recorded the gig.
Steve Ferrone was playing in French Toast.
Yes, Steve Ferrone, because
wow.
Peter and Steve were sharing the chair at the time.
So you must have been honored to get that call.
Well, I mean, it was just like, yeah. I mean, of course, it was like, but I hadn't gotten the gig yet. I had just gotten the call to check it out, and they were going to check me out, you know, in a rehearsal. So it was kind of still, you know, in the testing of the waters, so to speak. So I record it, I get the charts, and we have the first rehearsal. And I remember, I mean, I did pretty good with the rehearsal. I had studied the music, I had studied the tape, I knew what it was, but I had a lot of questions, you know, and I was asking Michel. I remember sitting down with him and just asking him about the parts, you know, the percussion parts of the different grooves, and like what, you know, like, because he was writing a lot of the music at the time. And he was nice enough to sit down with me and tell me, you know, like, you know, for this certain groove, you know, this is an island groove, you know, merengue, whatever it was. This is the parts. This is what this guy plays. You know, for the salsa stuff, here's the conga part, the whatever. He was writing all these parts down. And I just took it all home, and I figured out how to kind of put it on the drum set. And so that was, like, Michel was really my first teacher, actually, you could say, about authentic Latin, you know, feels and grooves. And so I did a lot of shedding. And when I got the gig from the rehearsal, right? I mean, they said, yeah, cool. But it was on a, rehearsal kit, rehearsal studio. So, we're not going for it, right? So
Let's go.